Hello, everyone, and welcome to this conversation presented by White House Custom Color.
Are you trying to mute me?
No, it's just real loud, and I can't.
I sold Amazon when it was $25.
Listening to listen, not listening to respond.
Yes! Oh, thank you for that. Jason, Vinson, introduce yourself to me.
Oh, man. So primarily a wedding and portrait photographer based in Northwest Arkansas, Bentonville area. Most people know Fayetteville area where the Razorbacks are from, but Bentonville's pretty known for being home to Walmart headquarters.
Walmart, yeah.
Yeah, Walmart, Sam's Club, Tyson Foods, JB Hunt, all those. There's a lot of really big companies that have their like main headquarters out here. But yeah, I've been here for a little over 10 years. Been shooting weddings for a little over 10 years. Full time for I think 3 or 4 years. Been full time weddings. Before that, I was a mechanical engineer for Tyson Foods.
Oh,
yep. And yeah, I can keep going. I don't know.
well, let me ask you this, because every time someone says I worked in the corporate world, or I was an engineer, or I was a finance manager, I've heard people go from like really, I don't know, it's typically really nice setup careers, right? To into this creative field where you're, at first glance, you're kind of throwing caution to the wind, so to speak, aren't you? I mean,
yeah,
you're like, this is what I'm going to do now. And the safety net of a well-established career in a well-established field like engineering is gone. So
I mean,
what was that like for you?
It's not really gone. Like I always have that piece of paper with my name on it. If for some reason down the road I want to fall back on it.
So you look at it as like a plan B now.
Yeah, hopefully a plan B that I never have
that
to
you never
use
need to use.
And I never plan on going back. But I mean, the easy part about leaving the engineering job is, so my background's mechanical engineering. That's what my degree's in. But my job with Tyson Foods was never actually considered engineering as far as what I went to school for. So it was mostly, I got the job because I had a technical degree, and basically what I was doing, there's no school for it. So they just need to hire people that have the aptitude to perform tasks and
Sure.
work with the software and stuff like that they have developed. So it was something that I wasn't really passionate in anyways.
Yeah.
And so that made it a little easier. And I guess I just kind of started to value the experiences that photography was bringing me over sitting in a cubicle.
Yep.
And so what it came down to is, I mean, at that point we'd been shooting by the time I quit, we had been shooting weddings for more than 5 years, and we're doing destination weddings and stuff like that. And so I was using all my vacation days to go shoot weddings, basically,
right.
which was fine, because like you turn a destination wedding into a 3 or 4 day vacation, and it's a lot of fun. And so it's not like I was wasting vacation days by any means.
Sure.
But it came down to, I was out of vacation days, and I had the opportunity to go on an all expenses paid trip to India to shoot the Holi Festival.
Oh my.
And so I put in my request for time off without pay so that I could go on this trip.
Yeah.
And they told me no.
They said no.
Yeah. They told me no. They said I couldn't go. And so right with the instant they told me no, I knew that I just continued forward. I got my flights booked, and I knew 2 weeks before my flight left, I put in my 2 weeks notice.
Yeah. So it was almost, in a way, the decision was made for you.
Yeah. And I mean, that's how everyone leaves I feel like that's how everyone kind of leaves that corporate safety net that you talked about into the creative field. Is there's always the desire and the want to do it, but there has to be one thing that pushes you over the edge. And for me, it was, yeah. And so for me, it was kind of this like once in a lifetime opportunity. And to this day, it's still one of my favorite shoots of all time.
You're so glad you did it. Right.
Yeah. So no regrets. And I'm sure there's people that make the jump and they're like, oh man, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
But at least thankfully for me, it's kind of worked its way out.
And so is it kind of like one of those, the rest is history type things where, you did that, and it just kind of snowballed and weddings became a bigger deal, and you're doing more of them, and you're traveling more places, and it's becoming like a really big business for you essentially.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just kind of one of those things, like you just have the ability to spend more time on it because I mean, you're working a 9 to 5. And so it's hard to spend the adequate amount of time to build a business if you're not 100% in it. So
Right.
it's just being able to spend more time on it and, get better practices on client experiences, work better on your website, updating SEO and things like that. And then I spend a lot of time just like in the photography field as far as like, I write articles for F-Stoppers. I've written for SLR Lounge, Shot Kit and things like that. And so I kind of enjoy being in the education side of it a little bit as well too. So it's kind of just made it so I have the time to do that.
You have more time to put into, this is your career now, essentially.
Yeah.
What sort of challenges do you find? Because you have a son.
Yeah.
What
He's
sort of
2.5, and now we have a daughter who is 2 months old.
Oh, I didn't even know that second part.
Yeah, it's new.
That's pretty new. So what sort of challenges do you, okay. All right. So, cause you've been doing this for 10 years, a good 10 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
You kind of know what it's like before kids. And now you know what it's like, not only after one little baby, but now after 2 little babies.
Mm-hmm.
How are things just completely different for you now than they were before, given that?
It's not crazy different. It's just kind of reshuffling the schedule. So, normally before kids, you'd wake up at 7 or 8 and work all day and then hang out, have dinner and stuff like that. But now it's like I wake up a little earlier, spend time with the kids. There's days where I don't work at all, or I only work like during nap time because I'm watching the kids or something like that. But it's nice to have that flexibility, because if I had the regular 9 to 5, like, yeah, I would get the paternity leave for a month or whatever, and then I'd have to go back to work. And so now I get to spend more time at home while still doing the job that I love. It's just, I have the flexibility to kind of shuffle my schedule around and make it work.
And how many of your weddings are destination weddings? Like, how often are you gone?
Not so much anymore. We kind of dialed back on the destination aspect of our business once we had our son. Within the first year of Zayden being born, he went on more than 19 different flights with us. So we just took him with us.
Oh,
because kids travel for free.
Right.
Until they're older than 2. And so now he's 2. And so now it's like, oh, now we have to,
right.
I have to kind of figure this out a little bit more, but yeah, but the first year, he took his first trip on a plane when he was 3 months old, I think. And we took him to Mexico for 2 weeks.
What is the biggest thing in your teaching that you've discovered that other maybe budding wedding photographers can learn from you? Like, what is it that you have to offer that really stands out?
Just being more diligent in thinking about like light, moment, and composition, and not just shooting at something. So I find that a lot of like beginning photographers will shoot at a moment instead of getting themselves into the moment. And so you see a lot of images that it looks like it's taken from far away. And so a lot of the times that has to do with like lens choice and stuff like that. Like people starting out wedding photography love their 70 to 200 because they can just crank it to 200 millimeters and they can get real tight and close. But with that focal length, you feel outside of the moment. And so being comfortable being close to people and being inside of moments that might be a little scary. People are crying, people are hugging, laughing, cheering. And so sometimes and you don't know these people a lot for the most part. You might know the bride and groom, but you don't know like the wedding party. And so it's hard to insert yourself into their moment because you feel kind of out of place. And so feeling comfortable being uncomfortable.
Feeling comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's something. Okay.
And so just getting inside of those moments, because it's hard to give the viewer that sense of being part of the moment if you're not part of the moment, because you have to get the camera in there.
But how do you balance the uncomfortable piece? Like, the reason that it's uncomfortable is because there you are documenting, and you know, in a sense, you're not part of the family. You're not one of the close friends, like you said. You don't know a lot of people there. What's the secret to being able to be there and not be there?
It's kind of your mindset. Like, if you feel uncomfortable being there and you feel like you're an outsider, then it's going to make it harder to get inside of the moment. But if you think about yourself as like, they hired me to be here, they hired me, they want these images,
right?
Even if they don't necessarily know they want them, like you have to know what people want and what they're going to desire. And, you know, like from past experiences and past clients where they say, oh, I love that image, try and get that same image for other people that may not know that they want it. And I like to think about it whenever I'm shooting a wedding, as far as the images that are going to be delivered, is what, if who's going to be looking at these images? Like, their future kids are going to be looking at these images. And if their future kids were at the wedding, where would they be? Would they be in the back of the chapel, or would they be on the front row? Oh,
that's a really good way to put it. I've never thought of it that way before.
Yeah. And so you want to think about how they want their kids to experience their wedding, and how they would experience it if they were actually there. And then that's where you need to put your camera.
So in your mind, you almost have to be like, I'm being paid to do this. This is my responsibility. It's almost, is there like a confidence that you need to have? Like, you're there because you're supposed to be there. And that's kind of, I mean, everybody knows you're the photographer, right? So you can't just kind of like,
I mean, people know that you're there to take pictures. And so if you can just get outside of your head, like, one of the main fears when you first start out is like, oh, I'm going to be in someone's way, I'm going to block someone's view.
That's what I'm thinking. Right.
But for the most part, like, they can just lean to the side, or they can get a little taller, or you go a little lower.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the times I'm shooting from lower, so people could just look right over my head for the most part, or I'm close enough to where, what am I blocking? I'm blocking their feet. Like, they don't need to see their feet anyways.
Mm-hmm. What else? What other? I like these tips. These are good. What else do you
got? Just to be conscious in the decisions you're making as far as getting close, especially. It's not such a big deal during like the getting ready aspect or like the reception aspect, because like people are moving all over the place. But during the ceremony, just to be conscious of when you get close. Like, you don't want to be up in the bride and groom's face for the entire ceremony, but pick and choose your battle. So a busy, I forget who says this, but a busy photographer is a scene photographer. So if you're constantly in and out, moving around, people are going to notice you. But if you go in and then set up in a space and just hang out there, and then you step out, no one's going to notice you. No one's going to care. But if you're like in, out, over here, back around, then people are going to notice you. People are going to be distracted. But if you pick and choose where you go, how long you stay there, and then kind of get back.
I'm just thinking of like some of those videos I've seen where the photographer's like, you know, he's like jumping all over the place, and he's on the ground, and he's like,
if you want to get on the ground and get that shot, like there's the picture of like the people putting on the rings, and the guy, like, it's from underneath.
Right.
And so like, if that's the shot you want to get in there, lay down, and just don't move. Take it. And then get out. But if you're like there and then out and then there and then out, then it's too much.
So how much planning for you? Like going into this, are you like picking out your spots? Are you thinking I'll go over there, or is it more on the fly?
It's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Sometimes like we have bride and grooms that'll request to get the image from behind the priest, looking back, so you can see like kind of the top of the priest's head, but then you're seeing them and then all of their guests.
The audience, right. Yeah.
And sometimes that's a hard image to get because there's rules where you're not allowed to get onto the stage. And so for something like that, you have to clear it with a priest and make sure that you get permission, because you don't want to just do that in the middle of the ceremony and like catch a priest off guard, because that's when it turns.
I've seen that video too, where that dude is like,
up, stop, get off.
Right.
Yeah. And so, so you have to clear it with a priest and make sure. And so the funny story we actually had, there's a chapel, just somewhere in Kansas. I forget what it's called, but no one's even allowed past the first pew to get close to the.
You can't get up there.
There's just rules. You're not allowed. You have to be like past a certain pew. You have to stay on the back wall or in the balcony. And this couple wanted a picture looking over the priest. They wanted that picture. And so I went up I was like, I'm gonna have to ask the priest and see if I can get it. And so what I did is I put my camera in silent shutter mode. So whenever you click it, there's literally no sound at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went up to the priest and I was like, hey, the couple really wants this picture. I'll be really discreet. I'll be super quiet. And just as an example, the entire time I've been talking to you, I've been taking pictures. And so I showed him the back of the camera. It's like, I've been taking pictures. And he's like, huh, okay, that was really quiet. You can have one picture.
Really? You got the go ahead.
Yeah. So he was like, when they come out, you can come up, you can get one picture, but I'm on silent shutter, so I can take as many as I want. He doesn't know how many times I push the button. So as long as I get up, I got them, hit the button a handful of times. I stayed up there for maybe 15 seconds and then I got off it. But I got the image that they wanted. And it's probably one of the only pictures from that perspective in that chapel.
Sure. Right. Like, how often do you learn the hard way? Like, how many times has it been like you didn't make the ask? And like, I mean, that's like something I would think that some people have to learn the hard way. You're like, oh, well, next time I'm going to have to ask.
I've never actually ran into trouble. So I put, like, my wife knows, and she's constantly like, been like, you like to push boundaries, but I've never pushed them enough where it's like been an issue or someone said something.
Right.
But maybe that's just a handful of luck and then a handful of being like, maybe I shouldn't go that far. But
right. Like knowing how far to go.
Yeah. Thankfully, I've never learned the hard way especially from like a ceremonies perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the big thing, right? Like that's the piece that you need to get right. So if you want to push a little bit, it's probably best to ask and not just try to pull it off, during the ceremony.
Yeah. And then, I mean, because if you're going to be a distraction to anyone, it's probably going to be the pastor, because he's like talking. And if all of a sudden he's caught off guard, it's nice to be like, hey, do you have any, and just ask him like, hey, do you have any rules? Because a lot of the times there are pastors that don't even work with the chapel. They're just going by whatever they do in the past. And so if you just be like, hey, I'd love to get up here, is that going to bother you? And they'll be like, oh no, go ahead.
Well, and I know it's not hard and fast. And some of these questions I'm asking because I actually second shot for my wife for a few years. Mm-hmm. But I'm thinking in my mind, like in general, I always thought there are a handful of people that I want to make sure I'm not upsetting. And of course, it's the bride. And for me, it was usually the bride's mother. And then it was always the pastor. And then if there was a wedding planner or wedding coordinator, I always wanted to keep, like, there's certain people, and it's not always that way. Like some people are a little, I don't know, easy going or whatever. But in my mind, it was always like, here are the people. And you always know right away if there's somebody that's somebody you definitely don't want to upset. Like sometimes maybe the maid of honor. But in my mind, I was like, here are the people that I want to make sure I stay on the good side of today. And if it's that I have to ask extra questions and for extra permission to do that, or the other, I made sure I did it. Does that ring true?
I don't know if I've ever thought about it, honestly.
Oh man. Well,
I mean, aside from asking the pastor if I can go a certain place or be somewhere during the ceremony, just so it doesn't cause like an issue during the ceremony, or that it's just going to distract him and like just cause some sort of scene.
Yeah, you don't.
But other than that, like the bride and groom have hired us to be there to document things, and so I'd have a hard time thinking of something that I'd want to do that I feel like would
upset them in the first place.
Upset one of those people.
Sure. Now,
like, aside from like pushing him over to get the shot or something, like.
Tell me this: you do have a series that I'm familiar with, that you've documented and that you've intentionally kind of taken the time to create in the last couple months. Talk about that with me a little bit.
Yeah. So since the whole COVID-19 stay at home thing, I've been documenting every day. Not so much recently, but I did 50 straight days of family documentary just at our house. So it's of our whole family, but primarily our son, Zayden, as he's just been kind of going around the house and causing a ruckus. And it's been a fun project. It started off as just kind of like a one-day thing. I got a new lens that I'm writing a review for, and I was like, oh, I can't shoot anything else. So I'll take pictures of him for a couple hours, and I posted them online, and people loved them. So I was like, oh, it's fun. I'll do it tomorrow. And then it turned into the next day, the next day, the next day. And eventually it became this like daily series where for the first 30 or so days, I literally shot every day and posted every day. And then after our daughter was born, I still shot every day, but I didn't post every day because it was just a little harder to get to the computer to like upload and edit all the images. But but I still shot every day for 50 days.
And so your daughter is how old?
She's going to be 2 months next week.
So she was kind of born in the midst of all of this.
Yeah. It was interesting going
What was that like?
It was interesting because like whenever we had Zayden, we had him at the same hospital that we had our daughter. Our daughter's name is Riken. Whenever we had Zayden, like there was nurses all over the place. People are walking up and down the hallways. People are visiting. And then whenever we had Riken, it was like halls were empty. There was nobody there. No visitors were allowed. And then they got us in and out within 24 hours because they want you to be there as little as possible. Right.
So, I mean, no complications on that front, but it was a completely different experience than it was a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And so,
and then even coming home, like we didn't, because people are still doing like the self-quarantine thing. So like we didn't have any visitors, family couldn't come see her.
Of course.
It took a good amount of time for us to feel comfortable, like having my wife's parents come over, and we just kind of hung out in the backyard and still did like social distancing, but at least they could see her and stuff like that. And since then, everybody's been kind of self-distancing enough that we're comfortable having like close friends and family over and stuff like that. But
did you lose a lot of work, or did you have a lot of work get pushed?
We had a handful of weddings. We had 2 weddings cancel, and then we've had 3 weddings so far get pushed back and postponed. But we've also picked up 2 new weddings from other photographers that had to reschedule, and they didn't have the date.
And they couldn't make the date, right?
Yeah, and they couldn't make the date, and we had the date available, and so it's kind of it's been a wash, which has been nice. But just everything's just kind of been pushed back.
Sure. When you created that, where you were taking photos of your son every day, did you look at it as a creative outlet, or did it become something? I mean, you didn't expect it initially, but then you intentionally kind of jumped in and you were doing it. Mm-hmm. Did it become kind of an exercise for you and kind of a creative outlet during the time of craziness that we all kind of have been going through?
Yeah, it was just an easy way to keep shooting. Like I knew a lot of people. I've seen some photographer friends that are like, "Oh, I got to shoot." It's the first time I picked up the camera in 3 months.
Right.
And so it could be hard to kind of like dive right in. And so it was kind of just an easy way to stay sharp. But then it also turned into just kind of like I wrote an article from somewhere, but it's like it kind of became this like wedding photography boot camp type thing of like finding light, composition, and moments. Because if you shoot every day you're in the same scene, it's hard to get something different every single time, because kids have their routines and they do the same thing every day. And so like, how do I how do I tell this story just a little bit differently than it was yesterday, even though we're out here at the exact same time doing the exact same thing? And so that can definitely tie into weddings when you shoot at the same wedding, the same venue.
Oh, at the same venue. Sure.
Yeah. And so like all the players are different, but they're in the same room. They're doing the same thing. They're walking down the same aisle. And so it's like, you learn to stop thinking about where you are and just noticing the small intricacies of the moments happening around you and how to tie those into the light and the composition. And so if you shoot at the same venue over and over and over, you know where the good light is, you know where the good compositions are. Right. And so at that point, you're just waiting for moments to happen within those spaces. And so that's kind of how it turned into with the family documentary stuff. It's like, I know what time the light comes in this window. So if something's happening over here around this time, then I'm going to shoot. And then if not, then I'm not going to have my camera on me, because I wasn't shooting all day, every day. It was key moments where I know the light is good. I know there's a decent composition here. and it looks like there's probably going to be some type of moment happening. So I'll grab my camera. But other than that, it's just going to sit on the side or be near me to where I can easily just like run in and grab it real fast.
Well, what a great idea to like push yourself in that way too, like to stay frosty, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Keep your edge.
Yeah. If you want to learn how to anticipate moments, chase a 2.5-year-old around for 50 days.
Oh man, where can people find you and find find this work, both your wedding work and this neat little project that you did?
So Vinson Images, VINSON images.com is our website. And then on our blog, I have a full roundup of all 50 days of images, or all the ones that I feel worthy of posting.
Yeah.
And then I have a slideshow on there as well. And you can also follow me on Instagram. It's Vinson Images _Jason.
Jason, I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
I'll see you next time.
All right, see ya.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this conversation presented by White House Custom Color on YouTube. Be sure to check out our other content and click that subscribe button right there. Right. Right there. It's there somewhere.